Mama Salima, is that you? Mama Salima, is that you?
Everyone thought Mama Salima died years ago, until a man saw her selling food in another town. Everyone knew the name Mama Salima. Her small restaurant, a humble structure with wooden shutters and a thatched roof, was the heartbeat of Kaforo village. People came not just for food, but for her warmth, her laugh, and the gentle way she welcomed everyone, as if they were her own family. Mama Salima had never married. She had no children of her own. Yet her love poured into every bowl she served, every pot she stirred. Her dishes were famous, spicy, aromatic, and full of the kind of care that only came from someone who truly loved what she did. People often wondered why a woman so good-hearted and beautiful chose to remain alone. But she would only smile and say, "My joy is here in serving you all." From sunrise to sunset, Mama Salima walked tirelessly between her cooking and the village paths. She greeted everyone by name, asked after the sick, comforted the worried, and never took offense at anyone's mistakes. Her reputation for honesty and integrity was unmatched. Even travelers passing through would say, "In all my journeys, I have never met someone so kind." Children adored her. They would gather around her small stall in the mornings, eager for a taste of her soft, warm bread or a spoonful of her creamy porridge. Mama Salima would chuckle at their chatter, ruffle their hair, and hand them extra treats with a wink. It was as if the whole village lived through her joy. Her restaurant wasn't large, but it was a sanctuary. Inside, wooden tables were worn smooth but always clean. The walls were adorned with small decorations, carved wooden bowls, dried herbs hanging, and brightly colored fabrics. Every corner reflected Mama Salima's care, making everyone who entered feel at home, even strangers. Villagers often said her secret ingredient wasn't just the spices or the oil, it was her heart. Every meal was a reflection of her kindness. Even in moments of exhaustion, she would hum softly as she cooked, her eyes sparkling with gentle mischief, making everyone feel safe and loved. Despite her busy days, Mama Salima always had time for her neighbors. She would deliver food to the sick, offer advice to those in need, and quietly help repair homes or fences when no one was looking. Her deeds were countless, yet she never boasted. Her reward was seeing others happy. Travelers sometimes stopped just to watch her work. Some would tell stories of the way she chopped vegetables with rhythm, stirred her pots like a dance, and spoke to each customer like a friend. They said that even the wind seemed to follow her around, carrying the sweet smell of her cooking to the farthest corners of the village. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Mama Salima would close her shutters and sweep the floor, humming a soft tune. Even the crickets seemed to wait for her song. At night, the villagers would sleep peacefully, knowing that someone in Kaforo village had a heart as steady and kind as hers. Mama Salima's life was simple, yet extraordinary. Her hands cooked, her heart healed, and her smile lifted spirits. Everyone in the village knew that such goodness was rare, and they treasured her, not just for her meals, but for the love she poured into every action. And though she had no family of her own, the entire village felt as though she belonged to each and every person who had ever eaten her food, laughed with her, or shared a quiet moment at her table. As the seasons passed, Mama Salima continued her tireless routine. She rose before dawn, her hands already warm from preparing the first fires, her heart eager to feed the hungry. Yet even someone as strong as Mama Salima could not escape the slow wear of time. Her steps became a little slower, her hands a little heavier, though her smile never wavered. Despite feeling a slight weakness, she refused to let it affect her walk. She would greet each villager with the same warmth, hand out food with gentle care, and offer words of comfort to those who worried about her. Many villagers noticed the change, but her laughter still carried over the dusty paths, soft and steady like a familiar melody. One morning, after serving her usual crowd of villagers and children, Mama Salima felt a chill that could not be explained. She paused, leaning on her wooden counter, her eyes scanning the empty street. A strange calm fell over the village, different from the ordinary quiet of noon. It was a stillness that hinted something was ending, though no one knew what. By evening, she could barely lift her pots. Villagers noticed her unusual fatigue and gathered around her restaurant. "Mama Salima, rest," they pleaded. She shook her head, smiling faintly. "My work is my heart. As long as I can, I will serve." But even in her final moments, the villagers could see the lines of her age deepening, the quiet weight of years pressing down on her shoulders. That night, Mama Salima fell into a brief sleep that would never end. When dawn came, the village awoke to silence at her stall. No laughter, no aroma of steaming food. The children ran to the restaurant, then screamed as they saw her absence. The villagers gathered quickly, realizing that Mama Salima, the heart of their village, had passed quietly in the night. The village moaned deeply. Elders called for a gathering in the square, where people shared memories of her kindness, her laughter, and her ever-present generosity. Tears were shed openly, and the air was thick with sorrow. Her small restaurant, once bustling with life, was shuttered and left empty, a silent reminder of the love that had just left the village. For weeks, the village felt incomplete. Children wandered the dusty paths calling for her. Travelers passing through commented on the absence of her food and her smile. People whispered among themselves, "How could someone so full of life leave us?" Yet no answers came. Only memories wrapped in sorrow and sweetness remained. Months passed. Life in a village continued, but the story of Mama Salima became something between legend and memory. Then, far away, in a town across the hills and rivers, a woman began appearing. She sold food at the roadside, her dishes warm, flavorful, and familiar. People were drawn to her stall, though none knew where she came from or where she went each night. The food she served carried the same love, care, and attention that Mama Salima had poured into every meal back in her village. People who tasted it swore it reminded them of home, of warmth, and of someone who had always cared for them. And yet, though the food was familiar, the woman herself remained a mystery, quiet, smiling, and disappearing as suddenly as she arrived each day. No one knew where she came from or where she went when the sun set. Some thought she was a kind spirit, others whispered in awe. And far away, Kaforo village that had mourned her for months had no idea that the heart of their community was quietly feeding strangers in Lantoro town, continuing the love and care that had defined her life. In the town far across hills and rivers, Mama Salima had quietly settled. She chose a modest spot along a busy roadside where travelers and townspeople often passed. Each morning, before the sun fully rose, she would light her small fire, arrange her wooden table, and prepare her food with the same gentle care she had always shown. Though no one knew her past, every dish carried the warmth of her heart. Her routine was simple yet full of magic. She would smile at every passerby, offering a bowl or a plate with no expectation. The aroma of her cooking drifted down the street, inviting people from far and near. Children laughed around her stall. Traders paused from their errands, and weary travelers found solace in the taste of food that felt like home. Days turned into weeks. Mama Salima became a quiet fixture in the town. No one knew where she slept or where she went when the market cleared. Yet everyone remembered her smile and the comfort of her meals. She moved like a shadow, unobtrusive but ever-present. And people began to whisper that the food she served was special, full of kindness that no one could explain. One afternoon, a traveler arrived. His journey had been long, and he was weary with dust and hunger. When he approached the stall, the scent of the food stopped him in his tracks. Something about it seemed familiar. He looked up at the woman behind the table, and the world seemed to hold its breath. The traveler's eyes froze. His heart skipped a beat as he recognized her. Mama Salima. The very woman who had died in their village months ago. The woman whose loss had left their home silent and sorrowful. He called her name, and in that moment, Mama Salima vanished into the air. Pots clattered and screams filled the air. Everyone ran in fear. The story spread like wildfire, and those who had eaten her food trembled, fearing something terrible would happen to them. The traveler, heart-pounding, knew he could not keep this to himself. He had to return to his village and tell everyone what he had seen. Yet even as he ran, the memory of her gentle smile and the warmth of her food stayed with him, confusing fear with awe and suspicion with reverence. And so, the mystery of Mama Salima grew. Far from her original home, when the man returned home, he did not go straight to his house. His feet carried him instead to the village square, the place where truth was spoken and matters of concern were shared. Dust clung to his clothes, his breath came fast, and his eyes looked like those of someone who had seen something the mind could not fully accept. People noticed him immediately. Whispers followed his hurried steps. Before anyone could ask a question, he raised his hands and called for everyone to gather. Villagers dropped what they were doing. Women stepped out of their huts, men abandoned their conversations, and children followed quietly, sensing that something was wrong. When the crowd was large enough, the man began to speak. His voice trembled at first, then grew stronger as the memory pushed its way out of him. He told them everything: the distant town, the roadside stall, the familiar smell of food, the woman stirring her pot. And then he said the name that froze the air: Mama Salima. A sharp silence fell over the gathering. Some gasped, others shook their heads immediately. A few laughed nervously, convinced the man had allowed hunger or exhaustion to deceive his eyes. How could Mama Salima be alive? They had buried her, they had mourned her, they had cried until their tears ran dry. Some villagers stepped forward, demanding details. Others stepped back, fear creeping into their hearts. The man described her face, her movements, the way she hummed while cooking. He spoke of how he called her name, how she looked at him, and how she vanished before his eyes, like smoke touched by the wind. The square erupted. Some shouted that it was impossible. Others whispered prayers under their breath. A few remembered stories told by their grandparents, stories of spirits who walked gently among the living, not to harm, but to continue unfinished good. Yet fear spoke louder than wisdom that day. From that moment onward, the village changed. People still greeted one another, still went about their daily walk, but a quiet fear settled over everything, like unseen dust. Conversations dropped into whispers. Mothers called their children inside earlier than usual. Men locked their doors at night, even though no thief had ever troubled the village before. Everywhere, the same question floated from mouth to mouth. What if it is true? They whispered about the good woman who had returned from the dead to cook once more. They wondered why she had appeared in another town instead of returning home. Some feared she had come back to punish them for something they had done or failed to do. Others feared that eating her food might bring sickness, madness, or death. Unable to rest, the village elders decided action was needed. They gathered their walking staffs and agreed to consult the priests, men known for their wisdom, their long prayers, and their deep understanding of the unseen world. When they arrived, the priests listened in silence as the story was told again. The death, the burial, the appearance, the disappearance, the fear. Then the prayers began. Incense burned. Sacred symbols were drawn. The priests sang ancient songs and prayed. At last, the oldest priest raised his head. "Do not be afraid," he said. He explained that not all who depart are gone forever. Good souls, he said, never truly die. They live on, sometimes in faraway lands, continuing the good they started when their bodies could no longer carry them. The priest spoke of Mama Salima's life, her kindness, her service, her refusal to harm anyone, her joy in feeding others. Such a heart, they said, was too strong to be buried by death. Her spirit had not returned in anger or vengeance, but in love. Mama Salima's spirit still fed the hungry and comforted the weary. She cooked not with fire alone, but with memory, compassion, and a purpose that death could not erase. Her presence was a blessing, not a curse. When the elders returned and shared the priest's words, something shifted in the village. Fear loosened its grip. People listened quietly, reflecting on the woman they had known. They remembered her laughter, her generosity, the way she gave without counting the cost. From that day, people no longer feared her name. Instead, they spoke it with respect. They remembered Mama Salima as the woman whose love outlived death, the spirit who continued to serve others even from beyond the grave. Mothers told their children stories of her kindness. Elders reminded the young that goodness leaves echoes long after the body is gone. And some say on quiet evenings, when the wind blows from the west and the village settles into sleep, you can still smell her sweet cooking drifting softly through the air, a reminder that love, once given freely, never truly disappears.